So guys, look, there's many narratives out there regarding Islam, many false narratives, and one of the things that's pushed these days is you have science on one side, which is this amazing method which is leading to so much progress and amazing discoveries, and you have Islam on the other side, which they say is regressive and backwards and anti-science and tells you not to engage in science and so on and so forth. This is a false narrative. The reality is when you study the Quran, you look into the Quran, what you see is that the Quran encourages you to get involved in science, observe the physical world around you, study the world. Why? Because it inevitably would lead you to the worship of God. It'll inevitably lead you to God. And I really want to clarify this today by sharing two very powerful verses from the Quran, which are found in the 16th chapter, I believe, verses 78 and 79. God starts off by saying, He brought you forth from your mother's wombs, not knowing nothing. You knew nothing, right? No matter if you're the Einstein of the world today, you know nothing. Even he knew nothing when he was born, right? You come into this world with no knowledge. And then God says that He made for you, He gave you, He developed for you your senses. He says He gave you hearing and He gave you sight, alluding to the senses that we use to look at the world around us and understand and study the world around us. And then God says that He gave us hearts and minds. And the Arabic word used here encompasses all of the human faculties of reasoning. Our ability to reason and understand the world around us, our ability to use our rational faculties to attain truth and understand the world properly, right? And what's interesting is that God in this verse, so far He's pointed out two things. He has pointed us towards our senses, hearing and sight namely, and He's also pointing us towards, or is making us or reminding us of our rational faculties, our ability to reason and to understand the world around us. Now what's interesting is, not too long ago, obviously the Quran was revealed over 1400 years, but very recently in history you had the likes of Bertrand Russell, for example, an eminent philosopher of science, and he said that science is an attempt to discover by means of observation and reasoning based upon it particular facts about the world. What's interesting is that what he's saying is that, look, when we do science, what we do is we use our senses, our sight and our hearing, just like in the verse that we're discussing now, which God points out our senses, to gather data and observations, and then we use our reasoning upon this data to try to understand the physical world around us. And this is exactly what God is pointing out. So in other words, God in this verse is reminding us that He's given us all the tools we need to engage in the study of this world. In other words, to do science, what we call science today, right? But what's very interesting is at the end of this verse, God says He gave us all of these things. Why? He gives us the why, so that we can maybe be grateful, so that we can maybe give thanks to Him. So what God is reminding us that He's given us these faculties, the ability to study the world, to do science, so it would lead us to being grateful to Him. Right? This is something very profound. And then in the next verse it gets very interesting, because right now God's just reminded us, He's given us these amazing faculties, the ability to study the world and understand the world, and then almost as if God is telling us, now put this into practice. In the very next verse God says, there's a shift. He says, do they not see the birds as they're held up in the sky, in the atmosphere? Right, as they fly, do they not see? Do they not observe? Sometimes God's telling us now, use these abilities, study the world, look at the birds. Take the bird, for example, study how it flies, right? Study the way its wings are designed, study the way its wings flap to cause lift, study all of the dynamics that are involved that allow for the bird to take flight. Study these physical things and study the physical causes behind these things. There's no problem in that, right? And it's something we need to understand it. God is not telling us don't study the physical causes or there's no physical causes behind things. Absolutely there are. There are physical causes behind everything that takes place within this physical reality, no doubt, right? But God is reminding us of something far more important with what follows. God says, do they not see the birds as they are held up in the sky as they fly? None holds them up except God. Now this is where it gets interesting. Now someone here may say, well look, oh, so God is saying that He is holding up the bird. I don't see God's hands holding up the bird. Now this is silly. This is not what's meant here. This is not what we're supposed to take from it. Because God is not literally holding. God is not physical. He's not part of His physical creation. We don't believe in a God that's like a man that's within His physical creation. No, He's distinct and disjoint from His creation. He's the creator of everything that exists. He's the one that's all powerful. He's unlike anything you can imagine, right? But what I believe God is reminding us of here, this is just my understanding and my reflection upon this. What God is trying to get us to think about is this. Yes, the birds fly and there are physical causes behind the birds' flight, right? And you study those and you should study those. But don't forget, inevitably, at the end of the day, God is the one who's in control of everything that takes place. He is the why. So study the how, look at the how, and that's what science can do. It can tell us the how. When we study the world around us, we can study the how, but it can never tell us the why. And just because it can't tell us the why, it doesn't mean there's no why. The why is God, the creator that's behind everything, the one that's in control of everything. As we say in our tradition, there is no power, there is no might except the power of God, right? He is the one that allows for everything to unfold and take place, and he is the one that's sustaining everything. And this is what we need to appreciate here, right? So beautifully then God ends the verse by saying, you know, indeed in this are signs for those who believe and understand, basically, right? And what we need to take from this is this. Number one, God is encouraging us to get involved in science, studying the world, reflecting over it. But number two, God doesn't want us to miss the target. The reason he has given us these tools and these faculties to do science and study the world is so it could lead us to him. It could lead us to appreciating him, being grateful towards him, not to deny him or turn away from him, or to just study the how and then to remain on the how and say there's no why behind it, right? And if we really think about it, anyone sincere that thinks about the reality of the world and looks at the world and studies it, undoubtedly he will come to the conclusion that there has to be something behind it. There has to be. All of this fine-tuning and precision we see in the world, which allows for everything to unfold and even the birds to fly in the air, there must be something behind all of this, right? And I want to conclude in this point. What's profound to understand here is this. There'll be some people that say, well, no, you haven't proven God. Prove to me God exists. Give me evidence for God's existence. And when they say this, what they assume is that they want some sort of physical evidence. Because unfortunately, we've grown up in a society which almost says for you to believe in something, you have to have physical, tangible evidence for it. But the reality is God is not a part of the physical, number one, right? So you can't prove God physically or deny God from a scientific perspective. But number two, what's more crucial to understand here is this. When we talk about God, God is a foundational axiom, I would argue, for science itself. Because without God, you can't really make sense of the method itself. I mean, think about this. If you deny God for a second, what do you have left? You live in a world which is a result of blind, random physical processes. Everything in existence today, including yourselves and myself, we are just a rearrangement of molecules which have come together accidentally over millions and millions of years. Molecules and atoms whizzing around without any intentionality, without any mind, without any, thinking process or consciousness, awareness, or whatever the case may be, just dead physical stuff whizzing around just randomly, right? And has come together somehow to form all of this order that we see around us. I mean, how do we make sense of this? That simply doesn't make sense. How do you take one of the things that God's pointed out in the previous verse, the first verse we reflected over, our ability to reason and reflect, these faculties which lead us to truth, which allow us to understand concepts such as truth, right, which are necessary for us to do science. How do you make sense of such faculties and such concepts in the absence of God? You really can't. So what this shows is that God is almost a necessary prerequisite for us to make sense of the faculties that we use to engage in disciplines such as science. So in summary, the scientific method is a phenomenal method. We love the method, but as Muslims, what we do is we appreciate what it is. It's there, it's a tool which God has blessed us with so we can reflect over the world around us, understand the world around us, so inevitably it will lead us to be grateful to God, and gratitude is the basis for worshipping God. So in summary, I guess what I'm saying is this, that look, God has given us all of the tools and faculties necessary, as he points out in these verses, for us to engage in disciplines such as science, to study the world, to reflect over the world, so it would lead us to him, to his worship. It will lead us to understanding who our Creator is, so that we submit ourselves to him, and in doing so we fulfill our purpose, which is to worship him. So friends, whoever's watching this right now, look, I really encourage you to pick up the Quran for yourself, study it for yourself, look into it for yourself, look past the media hype and all of these false narratives that are out there, and I guarantee you will see something that you just never thought would be true about Islam. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time, may the peace and blessings of God be upon you all.